This episode is brought to you by iZotope. Our friends over at iZotope create the most thoughtfully and intuitively designed software for audio repair, mixing, and mastering. I use their tools every day for the podcast, and I love it. And I think you will too. Go over to iZotope.com and check it out. That's iZotope.com, iZotope. Use the code FRET10 at checkout for a 10% discount. That's all caps, F-R-E-T, and the number 10.
Allow me to live and breathe like a man.
You've heard his words on classic albums like Pacific Ocean Blue and Friends. His 1969 collaboration with Brian Wilson, A World of Peace Must Come, gained almost legendary status as one of pop's most storied lost albums, before being resurrected to great acclaim by Light in the Attic in 2008. Now you're cordially invited to take a trip into the mind of poet and songwriter Stephen J. Kalinich. Heyday Again Records presents I Love My Life, a postcard from one of the last standing poets of peace and excitation. Order your copy today. I Love My Life by Stephen J. Kalinich and Friends. You'll see why heavy hitters like Brian Wilson, Dennis Wilson, Paul McCartney, Steve Cropper, P.F. Sloan, and Diana Ross have all worked with him. I Love My Life by Stephen J. Kalinich. Order today at realgonemusic.com. Again, that's realgonemusic.com.
I love Helpless. It took us 4 or 5 hours for the cocaine to wear off to the point where we could do it at the speed that Neil wanted it.
Do you think he was fucking with you guys? Because from what I understand, you guys were up until 4 a.m. doing it.
Yes.
Waited until you were nearly asleep, which is why the song has its lethargic, slowed down quality to it. I wonder if that was intentional.
Oh, yes. It was very intentional. By Neil.
The kid with the magnifying glass.
Yep. And we were ants.
Right. How long did it take for you to start questioning the move of bringing Neil in?
Immediately.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with the brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 4 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Crosby, Stills, and Nash, along with our special guest, Graham Nash. This episode is part of a series called Wild Tales, the Graham Nash Interview Series, in which we discuss every last release the great Graham Nash ever had a hand in creating, including CSN, CSNY, CNN, and his solo career, and it details a history almost too crazy to be believed. Here's just a few of the many things that Graham and I discuss in part 2 of this podcast, the Deja Vu era. Woodstock, Altamont, and the death of Crosby's girlfriend Christine Hinton happening one after the other after their debut record was released. The other candidates who were pitched to join CSN before Neil Young. What Jimi Hendrix called CSN's music. A mind-blowing recollection of Jerry Garcia's pedal steel playing prowess. Graham's honest assessment of Neil Young's Country Girl. And an in-depth deep dive on every song that comprises Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's Deja Vu LP. If you're a Crosby, Stills, and Nash superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features a plethora of additional essential material. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Coming up, we've got an interview with Lenny Waronker, Denny Tedesco on his incredible new documentary, The Immediate Family, plus Season 3 of the Beach Boys and Your Dreams Come True series, which will absolutely, without question, delve deeper into Pet Sounds and Smile than anyone else ever has in history. Here's what you're missing this week if you're not a Patreon member. If you're a member at the private tier, you're missing out on the director's cut of Part 1 of our Wee Man Aussie-era Black Sabbath deep dive, plus our exclusive interview with the Immediate Family music doc filmmaker, Denny Tedesco. If you're a member at the Lieutenant tier, you're missing out on the Denny Tedesco interview. And if you're a member at the Major tier, well, you're not missing a single thing, because the Major tier gives you access to everything that Discograffiti releases. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then.
And the difference in feeling between the first CSN record and Deja Vu is this. When we made the first CSN record, I was in love and living with Joni. Stephen was in love and not living with, but very much associated with Judy. And David was in love with Christine. When we got to Deja Vu to try and make that album, Joni and I were no longer an item. Neither was Stephen and Judy. And Christine had been killed in a traffic accident. And there's a distinct feeling that's very different in both of those albums.
Yeah, it's night and day, actually.
Good one.
I have to say...
Actually, I'd say day and night.
Right, exactly. Although there was a much darker night to come, but for the time it was dark, but it would only get darker. But you guys do darkness very well. The first CSN record is my favorite. Just as far as the collective goes, it's always been my favorite. There's a feel on it. And again, it's unrepeatable because it's a Captain Many Hands production. You know, it's the thrill of discovery and it's friendships beginning. And there's a lot of stuff happening on this record that would change so quickly overnight. But for whatever it's worth, this is 5 very hard stars for me. It's a perfect record.
I love the album. I really do. I think it really shines. Even listening to it today, it shines.
As dumb as this is, how many stars would you give it?
Out of how many?
Out of 5. That's the scale.
6.
Okay, so let's talk about 3 quick things here. Woodstock, Christine, and Altamont. Okay, because those are basically the 3 lily pads that get us from Crosby, Stills, and Nash to Deja Vu, right? So your second gig, which was 2 days after your first gig, is Woodstock. And, that's the legendary performance. Of course, by that point, Neil's in the group. And David had a month and a half to enjoy the pink cloud that you were all walking on from having brought the goods in such a big way that night. Because September 30th is the accident when Christine and her friend Barbara Langer were driving the cats to the vet. And from what I understand, one of the cats escaped Barbara's grasp. Did Barbara survive?
Yes.
She did. Okay. So one of the cats escaped her grasp, jumped onto Christine. They swerved into a school bus. And David had to actually go identify the body, right?
Yes, he did.
And as you said, I watched a part of David die that day.
I did.
I'm going to ask you a very point blank question because I am a recovering addict. I mean, I have had historically problems with substances, and I am of the mind that an addict is born an addict and is looking for excuses to justify usage. Do you believe that David would have continued on to be an addict, or do you believe that he hijacked, not that he wasn't sorrowful over Christine's death, but do you believe that Christine's death was an unconscious excuse for him to go off the rails?
I believe you are correct. That's one of the reasons why David and I took almost like a year off and we traveled the world and got drunk in many places. But I wanted to stay with him as a friend because I knew very much that he was, on the edge of suicide. I have one picture of David that I took at the Chelsea Hotel where he is looking out of the window and above him is a neon sign that says exit. And I knew when I took that photograph that David was going to be difficult to take care of, but I did. As his friend, I stood by his side through many emotional moments, but I think you may be correct that he didn't make an excuse of David's death, but it certainly helped him to become an addict.
Because, not to denigrate it, because I know he cared about her very, very much.
Very much. She was really incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, she was. And obviously cared about him. Wasn't she the head of the Byrds fan club?
Yes, with Debbie Donovan, yes.
Right. But I also know that he was the guy who wrote Triad, and that he had a lot of girlfriends. And again, I'm not denigrating or saying that he didn't love her, because he clearly did. But he was with a ton of women, and often at the same time. And, in reading about the stories from 1974, it was like nonstop, right?
Not quite nonstop, but he did on that tour have two ladies with him, Christine and Goldie, somebody whose name I can't even remember.
And like half the time you went to his hotel room, he was getting filleted while he was on a business call as he was smoking a joint and taking a drink.
Many times, yeah.
One of the greatest hedonists that we've ever seen. But getting back to the point, I know that David, by the time he was even in the Byrds, had done heroin and had done cocaine. So it's interesting. I feel like he makes a timeline up to justify some of the drug activity, which is almost unbelievable that he obviously survived. Not even almost. It's totally unbelievable that he not only survived, but that he lived for another 40 years is almost science fiction.
It is almost. There's a story that David and Cass and I were eating dinner at a restaurant on Sunset Boulevard. David had ordered spaghetti with meat sauce. And in the middle of the dinner, towards the end, he fell face first into his spaghetti. At that point, Cass looked at me and she went, "Let's go." When we walked out, the waiter said, "Who's paying?" And Cass pointed at David and said, "He is." and we left. And we left David asleep in a plate of spaghetti.
What year would that have been, do you think?
70, maybe 69.
Okay. So still funny at that point, not yet dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't talk about Altamont very much, and it's obvious why, but is it true? I mean, I'm fascinated by Altamont just as a literal and metaphorical end of the 60s, but to have gone from Woodstock and then to experience this very, very different event. And then from what I understand, through the whole set, Stephen was repeatedly stabbed in the leg by a stoned out Hell's Angel with a sharpened bicycle spoke. Is that what was going on during your set?
Not all the time, but at some point, yes.
Do you have that set? Because I can send that to you.
You can send it to me if you wish. I know that we wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. The background music for the set changes was electronic music. It was very harsh and very sharp. And we also had a gig that night in Los Angeles at the UCLA Hall where Stephen actually passed out. But yeah, there was a lot of interference by the Hells Angels that ended up with that guy getting stabbed to death. I got a letter on this tour that I just completed. So I must have got the letter maybe April 28, something like that. What happened is that to get our equipment to Altamont, it was crazy trying to get there. So we were hanging out with a lawyer called Melvin Belli, very, very, very famous San Francisco lawyer.
He put the thing together.
Yeah. We hotwired someone's truck. We stole it. We put all our equipment in there, and all four of us, maybe Neil wasn't there. I can't quite remember, but certainly the three of us and Melvin Belli were in the back of this truck that we had hotwired and stolen. And that's how we got our equipment to Altamont. And we're very pleased that Altamont was the Stones show, historically.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, was it kind of overstated, that sort of dark vibe? Do people play that up, or did you feel that from the second?
Oh, no. From the second we got there, we knew that this was a bummer.
Okay. And did that hang over things moving into the future, or was it just another gig and you put it behind you?
It was another gig, but we didn't put it behind us. But thankfully, we had that show at the UCLA Hall, and even though Stephen was a little out of it and fainted before the show.
Why did he faint?
Probably too much cocaine.
Okay.
But we did a Crosby, Stills and Nash Young show at the place, and that kind of became our memory of that day. We tried to push Altamont as far away from us as we possibly could.
Yeah. Well, for whatever it's worth, you guys sounded incredible.
We try our best,
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it was a total nightmare. But speaking of nightmare, enter Neil Young. So thanks to Captain Many Hands studio virtuosity, just out of curiosity, did you ever consider not becoming a touring concern?
No, we knew that the next thing you have to do after a hit record is go on the road. That was the way it was done, so we knew we'd have to go on the road.
Legend has it that you guys approached Steve Winwood first after Traffic split. Is that what happened?
Here's what happened. Steven knew that we would have to get somebody. The first person he wanted was Jimi. Jimi was not interested in participating in what Jimi called, and I love this, the Western Sky sound.
Yeah.
That's what he thought CSN was. Stephen went to Steve Winwood. He marched in the mud into Winwood's house. Winwood wasn't interested. Stephen flies back to New York. Him and David go to dinner with Ahmet Erdogan, our dear friend and the owner of Atlantic Records.
Wait, no John Sebastian? I heard he was the next contender before Ahmet.
Yes, he was. But, the Spoonful were very popular and John was very happy in the Spoonful. And even though he played harmonica on the end of Deja Vu, the song, I love John. When Stephen asked him, who should him and David get? This was before me. Who should they get as a harmony singer? John said, you either get Phil Everly or you get Graham Nash. So I've loved John from the moment I ever worked with him. But yeah, Stephen and David were having dinner with Ahmet. Ahmet says, I know who you should get, man. And Stephen said, oh, really? It's been a nightmare so far. No one wants to do this. He said, yeah, but Ahmet said, I know who you should get. And Stephen said, okay, who? And Ahmet said, you got to get Neil. And Stephen said, are you out of your fucking mind, Ahmet? I've just been through 2 years of madness with this guy. Yeah, we're doing this show. No, we're not. Yes, we're doing the Ed Sullivan Show. No, we're not. And Stephen, realized that what Ahmet was suggesting was possibly correct, but emotionally a nightmare for Stephen. When Stephen and David had calmed down after that dinner, they realized that maybe Ahmet was right. So they came to me in Los Angeles and said, we want Neil to join the band. I said, wait a second. I've never even met Neil. How the fuck do I know that he's going to fit in here? 4-part harmony is way different than 3-part harmony, which we had, I was going to say conquered, but you know what I mean.
No, but conquered, yes. Didn't he agree to be the band's organ player, with Stills being the guitarist at first?
I don't know that.
That's I could be wrong, obviously.
It could be because, Neil is a great guitar player, so why would he want to give himself that gig? I don't believe that's right.
Yeah.
But I said, first of all, I need to meet this guy. I know he's a great songwriter, and I know that he's got an interesting voice. I said, but, can I trust him with secrets? Can I be his friend? Who is this? So I said, okay, I understand musically what you're talking about, but I have to meet Neil. So we arranged a breakfast on, I think, Bleecker Street. And after that breakfast, I was convinced that they were correct. Neil was incredibly self-effacing. He was very funny. He was very dark at the breakfast. And finally, I said to him, hey, Neil, why the fuck should we invite you into this band? Honestly, tell me. And he looked at me and he said, you ever heard me and Stephen play guitar together, with each other and against each other? I said, yeah, I've heard a little of it in the Springfield. He says, that's why you need me in this band. And he was right. A lot of people think the best thing that happened to CSN was Neil. A lot of people think the worst thing that happened to CSN was Neil.
Here's what I'll say. I'm a big fan of Neil Young. I have everything he's ever put out. I've always loved his work. Some of it, including Tonight's the Night, is in my top 10 albums of all time.
Great.
But I feel like in the context solely of CSN, and especially in the last couple of weeks when I'm doing my research, and every time he enters the picture, I want to choke him. I mean, I feel like he's the adult equivalent of a kid with a magnifying glass setting ants on fire.
Wow, what a great description of Neil.
I mean, I feel like he just wants to fuck with things just to see how people will react. Like life is a playset. You know, he's obviously aesthetically brilliant and follows his muse wherever it takes him, but a very particular kind of personality that, frankly, with all due respect to you guys, you didn't need.
Particularly when you think about the album Deja Vu.
Yeah.
I mean, we already had Our House. We already did Teach Your Children. Both of those songs Neil never played a note on or sang on at all. We already had Cut My Hair. We already had 4 and 20, you know.
He's not on the album at all until track 3.
That's right.
And so here's what happens, and it happens with every group. You guys are certainly not unique in this, where you guys go to Wally Heider's, which at that point I think was very new, right? It was just opening.
Certainly the San Francisco. Yeah, that's where we did most of Deja Vu.
And so, you know, the first record, you guys are, you know, in the same room all the time, gathered around a mic. There's only 3 songs on this whole record where you're in the same room at the same time. Almost Cut My Hair, Helpless, and Woodstock. That's not to put the record down, but all of a sudden, your entire approach to making records does a 180. You guys are in a whole different space. You know, aside from the trauma, Steven, he had broken up with, like you said, broken up with Judy. He had a bad fall while riding a horse, so he's laid up on crutches. He can't be Captain Many Hands. You're in America for the first time by yourself, you know, because it's post-Joni at this point, right?
Yes.
And Crosby, this is post-Christine. And so sometimes he's crumpled up in a heap on the floor crying. So you're sent home on suicide watch with him. Neil had Danny Whitten, all that stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm in trouble with his wife.
Right, with Susan. Yeah,
Yep.
So everything's mired in total insanity at that point. So you have a whole different vibe. And of course, there's a red herring right out of the gate. The song that you had actually requested of Steven, because you were the master of the album opener. You know you should be a manager, because they're usually the ones to suggest we need a new opener here.
Well, you see, I said to Stephen, I said, you know, we don't have Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. He said, I know, we used it on the first record. I said, no. We don't have the opening song yet. We need a song where, once again, people are not going to take off the needle after the first song. And 2 days later, he goes, hey, Willie, what do you think about this? I went, if we make a great record of that, we have our opener. And we did.
Yeah. But also what's brilliant about it is it's a total red herring, because we start the record with Love Is Coming to Us All, and then we take a sharp left at that point. Dallas said, and this is really the quote that stays with me the most about this song, it was something of a message to the group, since it had become a real struggle to keep the band together at that point. I mean, we're just months into the band's gestation, and it's a struggle to keep it together. Was it the interpersonal? Or was it just, it was?
Yeah, completely. I mean, you've got 4 pillars there, you know. You've got me, you've got David, you've got Stephen, you've got Neil. Everyone with an ego, everyone with a certain way of making records, everybody feeling differently, romantically. It was a fucking mess. I can't believe that you know, I mean, well, I'm going to move my camera around, okay?
Okay, sure.
You see what's there? Can you see that?
Yes, I can. Yeah, of course.
That's the only record I have of Deja Vu, but it's after 4 million sales. I can't believe that those 4 people, given the time that we were living in, given the emotional upset that we were all witnessing and taking part on, it's astonishing that we made an album that good.
But isn't it 8 million that you sold? I thought it was 8 million.
Yeah, it is 8 million, yeah.
You're very modest, Graham.
Well, yeah.
I mean, this remains the highest selling album of all of your careers. All of you guys, which is amazing. I mean, because considering the circumstances, and it adds texture, I think, to the group. No one wants to go through trauma. We don't have a choice when we're thrown into the deep end on something like that. But you guys made something that was aesthetically interesting out of the trauma. And by the way, from what I understand, Carry On was the inspiration for the Led Zeppelin song Friends on Zeppelin 3.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And when I say inspired, I mean they stole it from you guys.
God bless them. You know, steal from the best, I guess.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about Teach Your Children. Again, written when you were in the Hollies, which I can't believe they even allowed you to go. They should have chained you up in a basement and made you write for them forever.
The truth is that I hadn't finished Teach. It was very much done, but I didn't really finish it until I came to America.
Okay.
But I had finished it during the first CSN record.
Right.
It was such a simple song. It was like, this doesn't live up to Helplessly Hoping, or You Don't Have to Cry, or Guinevere. This is not that good, you know. I just never brought it up until Deja Vu.
I think I have a recording of it from the first record.
Yep, you probably do.
There's two heroes that helped you give birth to the recording of the song, and that's Stephen and Jerry.
Yes.
Stephen, from what I understand, although I have no recording of this, it started as a Henry VIII style song, as he terms it, to a hit record with country swing.
That was Stephen's brilliance. Because the first time I ever played Teach Your Children for him, he said, that's a great song. Don't ever play it like that again. And I said, what? He said, no. Try this. Then he put, that beautiful right-hand picking pattern that he's so famous for, and turned it into a hit record.
Yeah, amazing.
And you got to understand, at this point in our lives, we were in a studio, the Grateful Dead were in the studio, right, and the Jefferson Airplane were in the studio at the same time.
And I can't wait to talk to you about Perro. It's just around the corner here. I'm trying to bite my tongue. And I know that tape that you created in 91 with all those Perro outtakes, I have that. I believe it's your I have a slew of Perro, and I can't get enough of that stuff.
It's true. We have to really thank Stephen Barncard, our engineer, for that.
Yeah.
He was the assistant engineer on Deja Vu also.
That needs to come out as a box set, because when you talk about history, to get those people together in one room and then have it not just be substance-induced wankery, but to have it be, everything you guys did was incredible through Perro. And you guys wound up benefiting the most. Your first solo album, even stuff on Graham Nash, David Crosby, If I Can Only Remember My Name, those records really benefit from that genius. And then Jerry, who I think is one of my favorite pedal steel guitarists ever, he had a window this big where he played pedal steel. And that window was opened on this song and then was closed on your material as well a little bit later down the line, which we'll get to. But his work on Teach Your Children is one of the greatest pedal steel solos of all time.
First take.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Here's what happened. I had Teach Your Children, pretty simple song. Me and Stephen made a track of it on acoustic guitars. Dallas Taylor was on tambourine, I think. And when he got to the place where there's supposed to be a solo, both Stephen and Neil said, you know what? We played a lot of guitar on this record. Let's not do that. What can we do that's different? Crosby comes up. He says, well, you know what? The Grateful Dead are in the next studio, and I've heard that Jerry's trying to play pedal steel. Maybe if, he likes the song, maybe he'd like to play pedal steel on it. And we all thought, that's a really great idea. So I made a rough 2-track. I told David to take it into the Dead studio. Jerry loved the song. He came out. He came into our studio. He set his pedal steel up and his amplifier. I hit the red light on the recording machine. Always did, because you just never know. We got to the end of the song, and I said, Jerry, that was unbelievable. He said, well, I made a couple of mistakes. Can I do a second track? And I said, yeah, of course you can. I'm just never going to use it. He said, what do you mean? I said, listen, you trying to find your way through a song that you've only heard once was fucking magic. We did take the 2 mistakes that he had made out of the second track, but what you hear is what Jerry did the first time.
That's nuts. Totally nuts. The one thing you left out, which I think is so interesting considering the material that they were working on, is that he made a deal with you where in return for him playing one of the greatest pedal steel solos of all time, you would help them improve their vocal harmonies to work on Working Men's Dead and American Beauty, and you changed them as a group.
Yes. Yes, we did. We had made a deal with Jerry for him to try and figure out how he created that sound. And when we told him, that it was basically one microphone open all the way around with 3 voices, that's how we created the sound. And they practiced, and that's what they did. And that was the deal that I had with Jerry. A little later, I was really thankful when Teach Your Children was completely finished and became a single, which did really well. I gave him a Fender Stratocaster that I had bought in Phoenix years earlier when I was with the Hollies for about $350. And he loved it so much that he played it as his lead guitar for 7 years in the Dead.
Wow.
And he slapped an alligator decal on it. First of all, it was bring me the Nash guitar. The Nash guitar, right? No. Bring me the Nash guitar. It was the Nash guitar until he stuck that alligator on it, and it became the alligator. And a month ago, Andy Logan, who owns it and owns Jerry's acoustic from the American Beauty album and Working Man's Dead album, we played them a month ago.
That's amazing. Yeah, those records, there's a very marked difference in terms of the approach and the sound. Western Sky is blowing through those 2 albums.
Yes.
I got to ask you about that song in particular and, Our House, which we'll come up to soon. Were you sensing what was going on around you at that time in terms of the encroaching darkness and so consciously acting as the light to balance out the energy? Or were you just responding to your own personal muse?
I'm a photographer as well as being a musician. I had lent about 30 prints to a museum in Santa Clara. I think the DeSese Museum, I believe. I've never asked or questioned anyone that owns the gallery how they should set up images. Images talk to each other, so you have to arrange them in a very specific way. When I went to the opening of the exhibit, my picture of my son Jackson when he was 4 years old peering into a circular aquarium that looked very much like somebody was big enough to be looking at the world. Right next to it was a photograph I'd collected of Krupp, the arms magnate whose family made all the bombs and guns and machine guns and bullets for both world wars. And it was at that point that I realized that if we didn't teach our children a better way of dealing with our humanity, that we were deeply in trouble. And that's when I finished Teach Your Children, looking at those 2 images, one that I had taken and another taken by Steiner of Krupp.
I've never heard that story. I don't know if it's something you talk about a lot, but it's an important song and it's played so often that I sometimes overlook it because I've heard it so many times. But the message in it is a message that will always carry. And if you really examine the lyrics, it's not quite so Sesame Street because you're talking about their father's hell and there's aspects of it that are grounded in a reality. It doesn't really have the kind of airy-fairiness that the sing-song simplicity of it insinuates that it would have.
That's correct.
It's an important song. It was a huge hit for you guys and in so many ways a kind of a consummate Graham Nash song.
Yeah, the last verse, of course, is, teach your parents well because their children's hell will slowly go by. Right. And is that not true as we exist right now in this moment? What's going on with America?
Oh, hi. I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show per week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show per week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti. This episode is brought to you in part by Bespoke LA. Located in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles, Bespoke LA is the modern podcaster's dream come true. It's got 2 podcast pods available, one with audio only and the other with both audio and video. Just think, you can start your own podcast tomorrow without investing a single penny in equipment. What, you don't have experience editing? Don't even sweat it. For an additional fee, Bespoke LA can edit your podcast. Or not, it's entirely up to you. Rates start at $75 an hour with discounts if you book 4 sessions at once. Go to bespokela.com/podcast. That's BSPOKELA.com/podcast for more information or to book your time today. And be sure to tell them that Dave sent you for a one-time 25% discount. Almost cut my hair. The track itself, I think it was the track itself, not David's vocal, was laid down just days after Christine got into her accident.
Yes.
And the unedited version is amazing, and it really is testament to probably what you were thinking when you had breakfast with Neil and he was talking with you about being in the band. That take is stunning. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's the first time that we're hearing Neil in the entire record.
That's right.
It actually took me a while to get this song because I took the lyrics for a long time as just straight lyrics about him getting his hair cut. But I realized over time that it's more allegorical and it has a lot more to do with more of a widespread panic that does not literally have to do just with getting a haircut.
Oh, absolutely not. It's David's frustration and anger about what's going on with people that rule this country. And getting the haircut is symbolic with, should I do this or is it just pointless? And I think there's much more to the lyrics of Almost Cut My Hair than people believe.
Yeah, and it's a very atypical David song.
Yes.
You know, he doesn't usually go for these kinds of melodic changes. He's, out in the netherworld, floating around these kind of hard changes. There's something on the 2004 Crosby and Nash record, the name of which escapes me, on the first CD.
Yes.
That's like that has a hard driving element to it, but it's rare for him to go there.
That's true. We had to get David a little drunk to sing that. Not drunk, but certainly on his way.
It's one of the best vocals that he ever laid down.
Yes.
And then Helpless, more than Neil's other songs on this record, this is the reason you brought him in, is Helpless.
Yes.
Neil had polio when he was 5 years old in Canada in 1951, and the left side of his body was permanently damaged, which I think he still has a slight limp to this day.
That's right. And don't forget, Joni also had polio and it affected her.
That's right. And he had actually recorded this with Crazy Horse in early 69. And you guys convinced him that the song would suit you guys better, which thank God you did that.
Yeah. I love Helpless. It took us 4 or 5 hours for the cocaine to wear off to the point where we could do it at the speed that Neil wanted it.
Do you think he was fucking with you guys? Because from what I understand, you guys were up until 4 a.m. doing it.
Yes.
Waited until you were nearly asleep, which is why the song has its lethargic, slowed down quality to it. I wonder if that was intentional.
Oh, yes. It was very intentional by Neil.
The kid with the magnifying glass.
Yep. And we were ants.
Right. How long did it take for you to start questioning the move of bringing Neil in?
Immediately. Don't forget, you got to understand, he told everybody at Woodstock, don't ever shoot film of me. And he never told us. He never told us that he had told those people to do that. So immediately we realized that Neil was on his own and he was going to stay on his own.
Did you ever try to kick him out before any recording was done?
No.
Okay, the song Woodstock, which, by the way, Stephen was so moved by the festival, I read that he had tried writing a song about it himself, but ended up liking Joni's better when he heard a demo through you. But my question to you is, even though it was David who discovered and first produced Joni, and Neil, who was Canadian and played along with her in the coffee houses, and you, of course, who were living with her and in love with her, how is it then that Stephen, who is the member that she has the least connection with, who gets to the heart of this thing? How did that end up like that?
Joni was supposed to play Woodstock.
Right.
But Elliot and Geffen, our managers, realized after the media said, hey, there's going to be 25,000 people there. Oh, sorry, I forgot that. There's 50,000 people. And the next week, there's 100,000 people coming. And the next week, it's 200,000 people. Now then, Joni had booked our managers, they managed us and John, had booked her to be on the Dick Cavett show. Dick Cavett show was very, very popular, and it was supposed to be John's first television appearance. So Joni did not go to Woodstock.
Right, but you had your cake and ate it too.
That's true. Here's what happened. Joni and I were staying at the Carlisle Hotel in Manhattan. In part of our suite was a grand piano. We got to my apartment and Joni's apartment the day after Woodstock, and Joni played us the song. In musicians' terms, it was a little more purple than ours. It was a little slower. But when she got to the end, Stephen looked at her and said, and there was only me and David and Stephen and Joan playing piano. He looked at Joan and said, can we have this song? I know exactly what to do with it. And Joni said, yeah, of course you can. And that's what happened.
Okay. I mean, I know the arrangement. And by the way, I love Joni. I'm a huge Joni Mitchell fan, but this is the ultimate version of this song. Her version of this always felt unfinished next to your version of the song. And of course, thanks also to Jimi Hendrix for helping Stephen arrange the song.
Yep.
Which is insane. I mean, it's your version of it and the version which is different in the film itself is astounding.
Yep. Crazy life, eh?
Yeah. All right, Deja Vu, side 2. We flip it over. One of my favorite of David's songs, which sums up his totally unique capacity to be able to craft unnerving and unsettling avant-garde music that is somehow ludicrously catchy at the same time.
I think that expresses everything about David you would really want to know as a musician. It's jazz, but not. It's pop, but not. It's rock and roll, but not. But it is. All those things all tied up together. And Deja Vu with Sebastian's harmonica at the end of it is a wonderful piece of Crosby music. Absolutely.
It's amazing. It's one of my favorite songs that you guys ever did. And it's also a brilliant template because it's kind of blank enough where it can be reshaped into an infinite variety of shapes. Like the mid-70s Crosby Nash Band turned it into this psychedelic avant-garde, askew kind of cubist thing. The 1991 acoustic version, the CPR live recordings, is very sparse and haunting. It changes for its environment and does it well.
It does. And that's one of the beauty of David's music.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people didn't understand about David's music, including Stephen.
Can I tell you something that has been haunting me for the last couple of weeks? And I just want to throw it out there right now because I'm concerned about it. Obviously, we're moving through this at a certain pace. I just want to make sure that you're okay. I don't know if you, A, have plans, or B, if you want to do this in increments, which I'm totally okay with. And I also don't want to second guess or be presumptuous enough to think that you'll be okay with doing it all the way through. But, I plan on basically having you hijack this show for a long time and having it be the Graham Nash show for a while.
I think you're right in that we should do this in series.
Okay.
I think that we should get to the end of Deja Vu and give us a break.
Okay.
And then start again.
Are you okay with doing that?
I am, and
Okay.
I will make time for you.
I appreciate that, because you can obviously tell this has taken a long time for me to put together.
And I want to help you get the facts correct.
Thank you so much. So basically, just to tell you about my notes, I am very in depth until it gets to Daylight Again. And then after Daylight Again, I mention the records, but I go to Crosby and Nash, and then we wrap up after Crosby and Nash.
Gotcha.
But if you like, depending on what your desires are, I can do research on all the other records as well. I was getting worried because this is after editing my notes down. So I didn't want to be presumptuous enough to do American Dream, Live It Up, After the Storm. I was getting worried. So do you want me to build on those or just keep it as I have it?
Why don't we build it on those? Because there are many stories in all three of those albums that should be talked about.
You got it.
But let's wrap up Deja Vu.
Let's do it.
And then take a break.
You got it. All right. So Our House. My favorite thing about Our House, a lot of people who are surface skimmer fans, when they think of Graham Nash, they think of Our House. But you once admitted that you were bored with Our House the day after you recorded it, but you'll play it occasionally because it means so much to so many people, which I love. I love that about you.
Yeah. Most of the songs, and I talk about this on stage, but most of the songs I write come from very ordinary moments. Something I've seen, something I hear. This was an ordinary moment that turned out great for me. The story is I had taken Joni to breakfast.
Arts Deli
on Ventura Boulevard in Los Angeles. Shitty day, very cold, rainy, foggy. Walking back to Joan's car after breakfast, seeing an antique store, looking in the window. Joni seeing a vase that she wanted to buy. It was reasonably cheap, so we bought it and got in Joan's car and drove to our house in Laurel Canyon. As I said, it was a really cold day. Went through the front door and I said, "Hey, Joan, why don't I light a fire and you put some flowers in that vase that you bought today?" An ordinary moment indeed that turned out magic.
Do you think that having these moments that you have frozen and trapped in amber forever eventually made it not only more difficult to get over Joni, but made the relationship with her loom larger over the rest of your life than it otherwise would have?
Yep, absolutely right.
Did you curse yourself to be able to kind of move on?
No, because I'm just living my life day to day. And I'll deal with whatever it is I have to deal with every day. And as a part of my heart, I will admit that I'm still in love with Joni Mitchell. And my wife, Amy, knows that. I don't crave her. I don't, wish I had. I don't do any of that. But
Right.
There's a part of my heart that will always be in love with Joni because she was an incredibly important part of my life, part of my growing up. And like I said, that's the way it will always be, I guess. The truth is that I've sent her a bunch of roses for her birthday every single year since we parted, even this year.
Do you think some of it is yearning for the Graham Nash who you were at that time? Because everything was promising, you had everything ahead of you at that time, too.
That's very true. I'll have to think about that, David.
But, something like this, you take an ordinary, everyday, almost mundane, right, sort of moment, and you give it this kind of import where it'll never be forgotten. And not only that, but the piano starts to become this thing that, unless I'm incorrect on this assumption, you begin to equate with a certain sort of honest lyrical songwriting bent, where it's like if you're really going to reveal yourself, you sit at a piano, and it feels like that came from your time with Joni.
Very much, yes.
Is it hard for you to listen to that demo that features Joni singing it with you?
No, I always laugh. It was a lovely, lovely moment. And normally you would never put anything like that on record for people. But I wanted people to know there was a joy in that demo. There was a joy in me trying to figure out in a sound check what my piano sounded like. There's a joy in the moment that Joni joined me on the bench to play, and she plays the top end of the piano, and I play what I play on the piano. And when we got to a certain point, I made a mistake. We just burst out laughing and stopped. It was a lovely moment that I wanted to share with people.
It's a priceless piece of tape. Is that from that day?
No, that was from a CSN show at the Philadelphia Academy of Music in 70.
Okay. I mean, what a song, but I'm sure there are days where you wish you hadn't have written it.
No, there's never a day that I wish I hadn't written it. Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, people play it at their weddings.
Yeah.
I had somebody on this tour say they played it at a funeral because it was their father's favorite song. No, I love people singing with us. Yeah. I encourage them to sing. Because if you learn a song and it affects you and you want to sing it to the man that wrote it, God bless you.
Yeah.
Come on, sing your fucking heart out.
You have this magical talent of making these songs that in almost anyone else's hands would be treacly and cloying. And yet when you do it, it has an honesty about it that is inescapable. And that's a talent that is so rare. I mean, I can barely think of anyone that has that particular talent.
Thank you, David.
I know you know what I'm talking about, because in the wrong hands, that's some dreadful stuff.
Yep, in the wrong hands it is, but not in mine.
Not in yours. All right, 4 and 20, which was recorded in one take, and which initially you were asked to put your voices on, and which you and David steadfastly refused.
That's right, we did. It was a beautiful performance from Stephen, and it came from his heart. And we also included what he considered to be a mistake, which is that he gulps at the end of one line. And I said, no, I mean, there is a second take of 4 and 20, but it's nowhere near as emotional as the one that we chose for Deja Vu. We realized that it was pure Stephen Stills.
Yeah.
And why fuck with it? I mean, a couple of times live, we have done it 3-part. It's nowhere near as emotional as just listening to Stephen pour his heart out.
Yeah, I've always found this song to be so powerful. And I didn't know if he was singing about his father or about...
Yes, he is.
He is?
Yep.
Okay. I know there's no way this could be the case, but you know about the marijuana 420 thing, right?
I only know because my son Will had his first tattoo that just said 4 and 20. And I kept saying, why is 4 and 20 important to you? He says, that's when everyone smokes. I said, what? He said, yeah, you come out of school and it's 4 o'clock and, at 4:20 you're with your friends smoking. I never knew that.
That's great. I can't believe your son has a tattoo of that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's probably very unlikely that Stephen was thinking that when he titled the song.
I don't believe so.
All right, Country Girl, which, at least one part of the sections of this song date as far back as 1966. And this is a weird song that is totally not in Neil's typical zone. And fortunately, Neil considers this song to be overblown, which in my eyes makes him a sane human being. I like this song, but it is not my favorite song on the record. Very atypical of him. What do you think about this one?
What Neil was doing during the Deja Vu was taking everything of his that we had sung on and taking it to his studio wherever, he had it in south of San Francisco and working on it. So when it came to record the vocals on Country Girl, everything had been done. We just had to sing to a track. We had no input at all, none from Stephen, none from David, none from me, in how the track was going to be recorded. It was totally Neil, and that's how it was.
It's the worst song on the record. It's not a bad song, but it feels like the only song on the record that doesn't reek of honesty. It feels like a crap.
There is none. Yeah,
there
right. is no honesty. There's no honesty on that on the track of Country Girl. It's all Neil.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a one-off, and it probably felt good for him to finish it, because I know it combined a couple of Buffalo Springfield songs that were left at the wayside, Down, 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 and Whiskey Boot Hill, but not as good of a mash as, say, 49 Bye-Byes and Carry On.
Right. Exactly.
However, Everybody I Love You, that's more like it. And that's probably what Ahmet Ertegun had in mind when he was trying to push Neil, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That was Stephen and Neil facing each other and going at it.
Yeah, this is the competitive thing that they had. So, like we talked about before, it probably felt like total darkness, Deja Vu. But in light of what was to come, I think in retrospect, it was just a trickle of despair by the spring of 70, because offstage, the despair hadn't yet fully quite hit yet. So I think the operative vibe on Deja Vu is something of a battleground between the forces of light and dark, with both emerging triumphant, neither one succumbing to defeat. And, here we introduce the isolationist tendencies of the group, which at first are working really well in a White Album kind of way, but would come to result in diminishing returns for you guys. I think you would I'm guessing you would be in agreement on that.
I do.
Because I know by CSN, by 77, you guys had righted that wrong and you were back around one microphone.
One of the things that people don't know is the very first time that CSNY ever played live, CSN alone ever played live was in 77. Everything before that was with Neil.
Wow.
Think about that. CSN Live was only in 1977.
So that August 16th gig, 2 days before Woodstock, was with Neil?
Yes.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Oh, yeah. And Joni opening.
Wow.
That's how ballsy we were.
Yeah, that's ballsy. That's definitely ballsy. The most surprising thing about Deja Vu to me is the sense of closure about it, because at the time, you guys are not only the biggest band on the planet, but your royalty, your musical royalty was at the time when, people don't understand now. Like kids now, they really don't get that the Beatles were defunct, Dylan was raising a family, and the counterculture and the world at large was looking to you guys for answers to point the way forward, right? And so not only would it be a full 18 years before you recorded again as a four-piece, but the record itself seems to portend that that's going to happen.
Indeed. And it did.
Did you know that before?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So my rating for this record is 4 5/6 stars, and I'm docking it 1/6 only for Neil's song.
All right.
What do you give this one?
Oh, I love this record. I definitely would give it a 6. Yeah, no question about it.
Let me ask you one more question before you go to have lunch or take a walk that you put on Instagram with Amy. Where did Willie come from? That's your middle name, right?
Yes, I'm Graham William Nash.
So Willie came from William?
Yes.
Is it just the anagram boys who call you that?
No, I think it was Joni who originally called me Willie.
From Ladies of the Canyon?
Yes.
All right, that about does it. Stay tuned, because next week, we've got Jackass's Wee Man on board for part 1 of a 2-part deep dive on Black Sabbath's albums with the great Ozzy Osbourne. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Monday, the major tier gets a very special treat. And man, do I mean special. Monday's bonus episode is a fascinating interview with music doc filmmaker Denny Tedesco about his newest flick, The Immediate Family, who are to the 70s what the Wrecking Crew was to the 60s. Also, while we're on the topic of Graham Nash, The Immediate Family became Crosby and Nash's touring ensemble by the mid-70s, earning the road nickname the Mighty Jitters for reasons we won't go into here. There will be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Monday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. Don't miss it, or you'll only be getting part of the story. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier gets their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of part 1 of the Wee Man Black Sabbath deep dive. It's the episode as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then come Friday, everyone else gets to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Graham Nash, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Bespoke LA, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the classic rock and roll from the 1960s is to go to the Beach Boys Season 1, Catch a Wave, 1961 to 1964, from episode 189 on, the Righteous Brothers Bill Medley interview, that's 181 and 182, my interview with the Free Design, that's 160 to 162, my epic interview with the Mamas and Papas Michelle Phillips, that's 141 to 159, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that's 137, my 12-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander from the Association, that's 109 to 113, Vashti Bunyan reading her entire output, that's 103 to 104, Sergio Diaz from Os Mutantes, that's 86 and 87, Bert Summer, that's 83 and 84, Sweetwater is episode 79, a tribute to David Crosby, 77 and 78, Andrew Tuttle rates the Monks, 74, Jim Florentine on Black Sabbath is 64 to 68, Lou Barlow on the Zombies is 59 and 60, Marvin Gaye biographer David Ritz rates Marvin Gaye, that's 45 to 47. Blind Faith is 43. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, it's 32 and 33. Bob Forrest rates the band is 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rates the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy rates David Axelrod as 17. Badfinger is 16. The Bee Gees is 10 and 11. Sly and the Family Stone is 5, 6, and 7, and Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, September 12th, we're coming at you with Wee Man on Aussie-era Black Sabbath. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!